nobody knows more about the NFL than our guy who's going to help us preview the 49ers and look around the league. Is Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated. We used to work together back in the day at Fansided. So I guess the three of us could say that in some way, shape, or form, Nick, in a weird way. And that's a true statement. Matt Verderame joining the CHGO Bears podcast once again. Verderame, good to see you.
How you doing, Carl? What's happening?
Well, I know you're busy, man, so I appreciate you making time. We'll get to the Niners in a second, but you know Shane Waldron in Seattle. You've got a ton of contacts around the league. I'm just curious because we haven't had a chance to catch up here. Like, this going as south as it went for the Bears, are you completely surprised that this is where it ended up? I mean, 9 games in, the Bears, obviously the whole thing's gone south. I mean, Eberflus gone, but that part of it, did it shock you?
Yeah, it did. I remember seeing the Bears in camp and thinking, like, okay, the offensive line's a question and a big one, and they got to figure that out, and they didn't. But I felt like offensively they had a pretty good idea of what they wanted to do. It had a good identity. I thought it was going to be a pretty balanced attack. Talking to people around the team, they really liked the running backs, 3 deep. They felt like they could throw the ball inside, outside, that Williams was going to unlock all that for them. And for a variety of reasons, and a lot of it leads back to that offensive line. They never could. They never got going. Waldron, I thought would be a good fit in terms of he's a veteran offensive coordinator, a guy with experience. And it just never clicked. They never were able to find the right balance, to get on the right page. I don't blame the Bears for making the move they made. And then, of course, Eberflus a couple weeks later, because Eberflus couldn't tell time. Look, at some point, it was going to happen. It was going to happen. If they don't win this week, I mean, you look at the Bears' schedule, they might not win another game. So it's probably time to break through and get one. But yeah, it's been a disaster. There's no question.
I mean, completely different vibes from when we were back at training camp watching this team and seeing what they could potentially be. But Matt, obviously they're going to be looking for a new head coach. The Bears, Thomas Brown, obviously has a 5-game trial period per se, but is there anybody that comes to mind that this would be a good pairing with Caleb Williams and what this Bears roster has going right now?
So over at SI, Connor Orr, who's a good friend of mine and obviously a colleague, he did a piece, must come out maybe 2-3 weeks ago, where he talked to dozens and dozens and dozens of people in the league and basically laid out in about 6,000 words who are the best candidates, where they might go, what's the talk around the league. And the talk around the league, based on the Bears, was Ben Johnson. That a lot of people in the league feel like Ben Johnson wants to be with the Bears. And, I'm in no position to refute it. Look, Caleb Williams is seen as a quarterback by a lot of guys in the league that he's got worlds of potential. And he was in a tough situation because he didn't click with Waldron and because the offensive line was Swiss cheese. And so I think there are a lot of people who feel like Ben Johnson is that guy. Now, Johnson's been a guy who a lot of people thought was going to leave Detroit the last 2 years, and he hadn't left. He stayed there. Does he leave this year? I think the expectation is yes, but the expectation was yes a year ago, and he stayed. I think if he were willing to take the job, he is the guy. He is you offer him a huge contract. I think he's probably the hottest coaching candidate in years. In terms of a first-time guy. So I think if the Bears can get Ben Johnson on board, he's it. He's who you would offer the contract to.
So the Bears obviously play the 49ers here on Sunday, and there's been a lot of conversation around Kyle Shanahan and what's going on with the Niners. So I just want to know how realistic it is to consider guys like Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan, especially just specifically Kyle's situation with the 49ers and what they're going to run into this offseason from a roster standpoint. Does it make any sense to you that they might have to hit the reset button as an organization there, and that might open the door to Kyle Shanahan being available via a trade?
I would be shocked. I think most people in San Francisco feel like Kyle Shanahan is the coach that's gotten them to 4 NFC title games in 5 years without a star quarterback. Or at least a superstar, depending on your opinion of Purdy, I guess. They certainly have to do some things with that roster. It's getting older in some spots, but I don't think if you're Kyle Shanahan, you're looking for the escape hatch, and I don't think the Niners are going to give him one. I don't think they're going to fire him. I don't think they're going to trade him. McVay, I just can't. I think when McVay's done with LA, I think he's just going to go to the booth. And he's going to make a fortune sitting in the booth for 20 years, and he'll just live doing it that way. I don't think he's going to go coach somebody else. I think he's pretty happy with his life. He's got a young family. And listen, it's getting sweeter by the day to be a broadcaster. Just go make a fortune sitting up in the broadcast booth, working, 17 days a year and doing, some prep obviously as well. But, you're not working like a coach is working. And you're making 2 times what a lot of these coaches make, 3 times what these coaches make. So, I would be very surprised if Shanahan or McVay are somewhere where they're not right now come 2025.
You want to go down the Belichick road, or you want me to do it? Because I'm happy to do it for you. Or you can have it at it.
You can do it. I don't know. Just for me with the Belichick thing, like, do you think he's still a good head coach?
I think Belichick's one of the greatest head coaches of all time. I think as a personnel evaluator, he was a disaster. But as a head coach, yeah, I think he can coach. I think we got to. He took Mac Jones to the playoffs a couple of years ago. Like, he got Mac Jones to the playoffs, and almost won that division. He got Cam Newton to within a game of the playoffs. Cam Newton then retired because he was so bad. Bill Belichick can coach, but I don't think he's going to be in Chicago. I think if he coaches, like a lot of people know, or a lot of people think, I should say, that he is going to go to Dallas. That is what a lot of people think, because he is very tight with Jerry Jones. They are very close. And so the thought is that Jerry pulls the Parcells card and goes and gets a guy who can give some credibility to the franchise, who can run the show on the sideline in an authoritative way, in a way that, frankly, a guy like a Jason Garrett can't. Even a Mike McCarthy, who has a ring, to his credit, he can't. The other spot people are kind of keeping an eye on is the Giants. Belichick coached there. He came up there. It is a very meaningful, important place to him. He has relationships to this day in that building with ownership. I think, and the Giants are going to be in a position potentially to draft a quarterback and reset that entire franchise. So if Belichick comes back next year, those are the 2 I'm looking at.
What do you think Belichick's going to get per year? What does that look like? Because somebody said yesterday, I forget who it was, I don't know if you guys remember, $25 million. Literally, is that number seems insane, but maybe he's Bill Belichick. I don't know.
I was going to say between 20 and 25. He's Bill Belichick. He's not coming back on an off-brand discount, right? The guy's got 8 Super Bowl rings on his fingers, including as an assistant. So
get that.
I don't think Belichick's coming back to get paid like I don't know, pick a name, Antonio Pierce. I don't think that's happening. I think he wants. And by the way, they're another team. I don't think he would go there, but Brady and Seymour now being part owners, I think he would hesitate to work under Mark Davis. I think there would be a hesitation there. I don't think that would happen, but something to consider.
Well, you're talking about money real quick, Nick. Mm-hmm. Well, then Ben Johnson, all the conversation with Washington, everybody's trying to figure out why it didn't work out with him going to Washington. There's speculation that he bombed the interview, or that he never wanted to go there, or he spurned them. And then there was the conversation about him asking for too much money. What have you heard, since we're on the money talk with Belichick, what have you heard of what Ben Johnson would want as a head coach?
I think Ben Johnson's concern, and I think a lot of people's concern out of Washington, was they had not been stable for 25 years. And if you're going to go there and take on that organization, just taking a massive leap of faith. Like, it's worked out to this point because they look like they got the Jaden Daniels pick right, and Dan Quinn was willing to head over there. And I think you had it, at that point, look, Harris took over the team. And Harris is an owner who he owns the 76ers. He owns the New Jersey Devils. Like, the guy, he knows what he's doing. But I still think there was a leap of faith there that maybe Ben Johnson wasn't willing to take. I think what Johnson wants now is wants a quarterback in place. I think he feels like, I don't want to speak for him, but I think a lot of people feel like the Bears have that guy. you want ownership that you feel like will back you and give you time. So whatever you want about the McCaskies, like they've never had a one and done coach, so I think that does factor in. Guys care about that. Guys aren't looking to move their whole family so they can be fired 14 games in. I think there's a thought of having a pretty clean cap sheet and having your draft picks. And in those regards, the Bears' job is a good job. Now, we could sit here and talk about the roster. We could talk about the McCaskies in some other ways. But in those regards, I think if you're looking at the Bears, you're going, okay, not a ton of bloated contracts, not a contract with a quarterback where you're paying him $60 million, a quarterback, though, that you think can be pretty good, and Johnson knows the division. So I think all those things do factor in as positives for him.
Matt Verderame, I guarantee everyone's enjoying this interview. Nobody knows the NFL. I worked with Verderame for 7 years. I don't think there was a day in the 7 years that he wasn't sitting at his desk watching 1983 Raiders tape or the 70s Dolphins, or perhaps he would just, pop in a Ed O'Bradovich or the 85 Bears. You got a piece out at SI about the Bengals perhaps should consider trading Jamar Chase, which, it's sort of in a Tyreek Hill type of thing, which is a super interesting piece. How did you get to that point, Verderame, where that popped in your head?
I was actually sitting in the Palmer House down in Chicago, and I had some downtime, and I was sitting there thinking about just different things and different stories I wanted to write. And I started thinking about the Bengals. And I said, you know what? I don't know why they wouldn't at least consider doing something like that. Look, I get Jamar Chase is an incredible player. He's leading the league in receiving yardage and receiving touchdowns. I understand all that. At the same point, he's having an incredible year. Burrow's having an MVP year. They're 4-8. Like, are they really going to have a better year out of those guys ever combined than they're having right now? And they have 4 wins. And they're completely dead on arrival, and we're not even 2 weeks into December. So I started reaching out to people in the league, and I talked to 3 general managers, and I talked to 3 other people, high-end front office personnel men, and said, look, if the Bengals went and made overtures to trade Jamar Chase this offseason, would they get a package equal to what the Chiefs got for Tyreek Hill, which was a first, a second, 2 fourths, and a sixth? And I was told by 5 of those 6 people unequivocally, yes, and they'd probably get more. So I said, all right, well, if you're the Bengals and let's say you can get 4 top 100 picks. Let's say it looks like a first, 2 thirds, or first, 2 seconds, and a third. Like, if I'm the Bengals, with all the roster holes that team has, I'm seriously considering it. And then that doesn't even speak to the fact that the Bengals do not have cash on hand. And you're going to have to pay him a market-setting contract. He's going to get more than Justin Jefferson. It's going to happen. So you're going to pay that guy $110 million guaranteed? Because for anyone who's out there who's watching or listening who doesn't understand this, like, when you pay a contract out in the NFL, the guaranteed portion has to go in escrow at the time of signing. It is immediate. So that means if they sign a contract like that, Mike Brown has to have $110 million on hand to put into escrow. And for everyone out there who says, well, they have the cap space, it's not about cap space. It's about cash on hand. They're 2 totally different things. I remember talking to people in the league when they were trying to sign Burrow. And this, to my knowledge, never came to fruition, but it was an interesting thought. I had an agent say to me, very seriously, that he thought the Bengals were going to have to take out a bank loan to get the money to pay Burrow. Okay, so to give Chase a quarterback contract, I'm not saying they can't do it or they won't do it. It's the most likely outcome. But if they do that, then Bengals fans should understand that is probably, like, that's it. They're not going to then go out and turn around and spend $90 million guaranteed on a bunch of other guys. That's just not going to happen. They don't have the cash to do that. So I think if you're the Bengals, you're looking at this team again, but now without Higgins, maybe without Hendrickson. And okay, you've got a draft class. Well, you better nail them all, because that defense, I've watched every snap of Bengals football this year. That defense is atrocious. You're not fixing that by drafting 2 guys who are going to start. Like, you need major high-impact guys. And then so I felt like that. And after talking to people in the league who thought they could get more for Chase than she's got for Hill, I said, well, that makes a lot of sense then to maybe move off of him.
Verderame, first of all, the Matt Verderame Show, it's available on Patreon, covering it, Sports Illustrated. Verderame has spent his life rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's also a big-time professional at the same time here. So, you guys are winning games over there in Kansas City, but it's been a lot wonky. Are they Are they your Super Bowl favorite? Who was the Super Bowl favorite in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, beat them. Yeah, until they lose a game, it matters. Yeah, I mean, it's how I felt about New England for 20 years. Like, I don't care that they almost lost games in October. They're 11-1. They're getting healthier. They're going to be the 1 or the 2 seed. If they're the 1 seed, they're going to draw somebody like Houston in the divisional round, who I don't think can beat them in a playoff game. And then they're going to welcome in Buffalo in all likelihood. And Buffalo has never beaten them in a meaningful game, ever. And I think Buffalo's fantastic. But I think in the end, like, you got to actually win that game. They got to show me they can do it. And if the Chiefs have to go to Buffalo, they don't care. They did it last year. They went there last year and had 9 yards per play and lit Buffalo up like a Christmas tree, and moved on. And I kind of look at it and say, it's not been perfect. But I'll tell you right now, as someone who does watch them every single week, it's a hell of a lot better than it was last year. That team was a tire fire last year. I didn't think there was any way they could possibly win the Super Bowl. And they went on the road and beat Buffalo and Baltimore and then beat the Niners. Like, I guess my point is, at some point, you got to kill the king. If you want to beat him, you got to actually do it. And you've got to, in all likelihood, you've got to stare down Mahomes in the fourth quarter of an AFC championship game, probably in their building, and say, okay, we can stop you. Okay. Now, until somebody does it, I will pick them. I think it's them. I think the 4 best teams are Kansas City, Buffalo, Philly, and Detroit. I think it's those 4 teams on Championship Sunday. And I think anybody could advance out of that. But yes, I would take the Chiefs until proven otherwise.
Well, the Bears have a long way before they get into that discussion.
Next year.
Caleb
versus Mahomes.
They're not mathematically out of it this year.
Yeah, good point, Greg.
They're not. But, Matt, as you're kind of watching these final 5 games for the Bears, obviously Caleb Williams is going to be the focus. But is there anything else that kind of comes to mind? What do Bears fans need to be watching these final 5 games?
I think it mostly is Williams. I mean, I think that's really what. I mean, sure. Look, some of the other young guys, right? I mean, some developmental guys maybe that are trying to take a step. Maybe some first, second year guys who are getting bigger snap counts as the year goes on. But I mean, the guy. I think it is Caleb. I mean, you're really, if he exits the year playing really well, there's hope for next year. And there's hope that, and it's going to help them get a better head coach. And if he doesn't play well and they finish 4-13 or 5-12, I think you come out of it with a lot different feeling. So at the risk of being really simple on it, yeah, I think it's Caleb. That's what matters right now.
Have you talked to anybody around the league about Thomas Brown yet, Verderame? Oh, no is an okay answer, obviously, if you haven't, but I'm curious if you have.
No, to be honest with you, no. I think most teams are not going to hire an interim guy. They're just not. And I think the Raiders did it, and they're probably going to fire their interim guy. So I, with all due respect, nothing against Thomas Brown. Most teams don't hire their interim guy.
Until Thomas Brown came along and then
what if he goes
somehow
5-0?
Saved the Bears. Hey, Verderame,
if he goes 5-0, sure, I would be floored if he goes 5-0. But if he does it, God bless him. Then yeah, he deserves a job.
Verderame, great stuff as always, brother. So appreciate having you on, man. Thanks for making time. I know it's a busy day over there.
You got it. Off to pick up my daughter from school. Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right.
We all silly like the mayor.